Hello, friend, viewer. I cannot even tell you how excited / nervous I've been to make this video. I've been wanting to do something like this for a long time. Dreaming, planning, plotting, being busy with other things, wondering if I should do it, and then going to the point where I just decided to just dive in. So let me explain. My goal is to just share with you guys the books that I read, the books that I love, the books that I don't love, why I don't love them, why I do love them, etc., etc. Because my love for reading stemmed from a very young age and has just grown exponentially, especially in the last couple of years. Today I am so excited because I'm going to be sharing all the books that I read between the month of January and the month of March of 2021. Between January and March of 2021, I read 14 books, and 5 of those books I gave 5 out of 5 stars. So all in all, I started off really, really strong this year with some great reads, some great learning experiences through some nonfiction that I read, and just generally kind of figuring out what my taste in reading is. In January of 2021, the first book I read was Home of Our Hearts, which is from the series Todd and Christy, The Married Years. It's the second in the 3 books by Robin Jones Gunn. And I gave this book 3 stars. So I read the Christy Miller series growing up, which is a YA series about a young girl named Christy Miller who finds the Lord when she's 15 years old, and she's saved, and she meets this boy, of course, you know, teenage romance. And so the first 12 books, they're just really, really short, like 160, 170 page long books. And I gobbled those up as a teenager. Gobbled? Yes, I just said that word. Anyway, as her audience grew, Robin Jones Gunn wrote Todd and Christy, The College Years, and now Todd and Christy, The Married Years. So I've read all of those. And it had been a long time since I had read anything from Robin Jones Gunn. And so this book in particular, Todd and Christy, of course they're married, and they go on this trip overseas to assist her best friend, Katie, who is a missionary in Africa, to get married. And I gave it 3 stars. Honestly, rereading it after reading some really good adult romances last year, I'm kind of realizing even more so now how cheesy it is. So if you don't like cheese, these books aren't for you. And also it's more so for like the fans of Christy Miller, people that grew up reading Christy Miller and all that. So I enjoyed it. It was really nostalgic, but I'm probably not going to remember it. The next book I read in January 2021 is Well Met by Jen DeLuca, and I loved this book. Oh my gosh, I devoured it in 2 days. I believe it was my first book of the month pick ever. So in December, they were doing like a $5 deal, and I'm like, $5 for a book? Sign me up. So I bought it and didn't know if I'd like it. Started reading it, oh my gosh, loved it, and sped through it in 2 days and finished it. I gave it 5 stars. For those of you who are bothered by open door romances, this is probably not the book for you, although it's always my opinion that you can skip over those chapters if you need. But oh my gosh, this book was so good. There is a bit of swearing for those of you who don't like swearing, but honestly, I believe it's on the lighter side in comparison to a lot of other books I've read recently. But oh my gosh, Jen DeLuca knocked it out of the park. So basically, it's about this couple, Simon and Emily, and it's like an enemies to lovers romance. So she goes back to her hometown to take care of her sister, who was just in a car accident and broke her leg, or legs. She broke something, okay? And she goes home to take care of her and her niece, and ends up signing up to take part in the Renaissance Festival in their town, and meets Simon, and they do not hit it off very well. Like, they do not get along. And then slowly throughout the book, you start to wonder, is it really hate? Is it? No spoilers, but seriously, loved this book. 5 out of 5, please read it. And then after that book, I read The Hating Game by Sally Thorne, which was highly recommended by a lot of people on YouTube that I follow and get book recommendations from. And oh my gosh, another 5 out of 5 romance for me, 2 in a row, so good. It was also an enemies to lover romance, so apparently that trope is like my thing. It's about these two office mates that are competing for the same promotion at a publishing company. And so obviously they're enemies because of it. And then again, slowly throughout the book, you start to realize maybe it's not hate. Maybe. Also, this book is not a closed door romance either. It's more of an open door romance even than Well Met was. And it has swearing in it as well. I always like to give that warning to anybody who does not like romances like that. If you do like romances, but you want them more closed door, I also have some recommendations for that. So The Hating Game and Well Met might not be for you. Although again, I will say, and I will repeatedly say, you can always skip over those scenes if you need to. The next book I read in the month of January 2021 is 8 Perfect Murders by Peter Swanson. And I actually listened to this one on audio. I gave this 3 stars. It was only okay for me. It was very atmospheric. I really enjoyed Peter Swanson's writing, but he unnecessarily spoiled a lot of really popular thrillers, like all throughout the book. Like the premise is that this bookstore owner used to write this column reviewing old books, old thriller books, specifically thriller books and mystery books. And all of a sudden these murders start happening, and they're almost like copycats of these murders that go on within the books that he reviews on his page. So throughout this book, you're trying to find out who's doing these murders, why are they so fascinated by him specifically, and you also find a lot of other weird, odd twists along the way about him, the main guy, who I can't even remember his name. So, I mean, that'll tell you. But yeah, I gave it 3 stars. I thought it was only okay. When I wrote the review, I said, I'm probably not going to remember this. And I'm telling you right now that I'm really barely remembering it. So 3 stars for me. I've read better thrillers. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it because it does spoil a lot of other mysteries in literature. The other thing was, I think there is some body gore in it. Okay, so moving on to February, I read 5 books in February. The first one I read, which is actually one that I listened to, it's called Hind's Feet on High Places by Hannah Hernard. I can't even read my own handwriting, people. I gave it 4 stars. It's actually pretty short. It's an allegory about a young woman who, can't remember her name, but essentially, like if you've ever heard of or read Pilgrim's Progress, it's similar in that sense. So it's an allegory about a young woman who's basically on her journey, and she along the way is having assistance from the shepherd on her way, you know, to meet the king, the mighty king. And so it's really allegorical, is that a word? We're saying it is, of the Christian's journey, and all the temptations they meet along the way, all of the people in their lives that are going to try to hinder them. I mean, I enjoyed it. It was a really short listen. If you really like Pilgrim's Progress, or if you like the idea of allegory, like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, this might be a book for you. The next book I read is The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn. I hadn't read a thriller in a while at this point, besides 8 Perfect Murders, which was kind of like for me. I gave this 4 stars. Oh my gosh, it was so atmospheric, so twisty turny. You can't trust anybody in this book. Nobody, not even the narrator, because she's an alcoholic. So let me tell you a little bit about what it's about. It's about this psychiatrist who is a drunk, and she's also an agoraphobic, which means that she is afraid of leaving her house and going outside at all. And we don't know why. We know there's a trauma in her past that led her to be this way, and it only happened like within a year before this book takes place. That's actually one of the mysteries that you'll be solving. But one night in her home, she looks across the way because she is a chronic like snooper of her neighbors. She's always looking out her window, keeping tabs on them. And she believes that she sees her neighbor get murdered. Nobody believes her. And so the whole book, you're trying to figure out, did she get murdered? And if she did, who murdered her? And what happened to make her an agoraphobic? And it was so good. The twist was phenomenal. I didn't see it coming probably until the last 4th, and when it did, that was the only way that I was super sure. And I immediately told my mother-in-law to go read it, and she loved it. It's actually a movie now with Amy Adams as the main protagonist. And my mother-in-law, if you're watching this, we're watching it soon. We already talked about it. It's happening. The next book I read in February 2021 was Let Me Be a Woman by Elisabeth Elliot. I have been wanting to read this book for years. I think that actually my mother was the first to tell me about this book, but she recommended that I wait until I was married, and it makes sense. So it's basically Elisabeth Elliot writing to her daughter who is betrothed and giving her basically advice and sound biblical evidence for what it should be, what being a woman should look like in this world. And oh my gosh, it was so good. I wept multiple times just from the sheer beauty of the doctrine and the truths that were behind everything she was saying to her daughter. 5 out of 5 stars. I believe my review, and I quote, said, easiest 5 out of 5 stars I've ever given to a book. So do with that what you will. The next book I read in February is Well Played, also by Jen DeLuca. So this is the second in a 3-part series of romances. And after I read Well Met, I immediately, of course, gave 5 out of 5 stars, went and read other people's reviews and realized, oh my gosh, this is the first in a series. And immediately told Matt, I need this next book. And he actually surprised me with it for Valentine's Day. So essentially this follows Emily in the first book's best friend, Stacy, and it's kind of her love story. And I don't want to give too much away because it's just a really soft, fun romance. Again, there is one open door scene that you are more than capable of skipping over if you want to read it but aren't comfortable with that. But yeah, it was so good. I gave it 4 stars because it didn't pack just the same punch as Well Met did for me, but reading Jen DeLuca's writing again and being in the Renaissance Festival of the town again was just so fun, and I had a blast reading it. And the last book I read that month was One More Wish. Sorry, my notes. Also by Robin Jones Gunn. So this is the 3rd book in the Todd and Christy The Married Years series. Again, if you watched the beginning of my video, you know I read the 2nd book in the series at the beginning of the year, and it was only okay for me. It was really nostalgic, so that experience was good. But there's a lot of cheese and just a lot, I don't know how to explain it. Sometimes I felt like how Christy thought about something or how she and Todd reacted to each other was not really realistic, I guess. Basically, it felt like they were portraying like the perfect Christian married couple. And I was like, you know what? If I'm gonna read something like this, I kind of want to read it where it's more real and raw. I don't want people to get the wrong idea, like Christian marriage is just perfect. And the misunderstandings in it are so minor and so small, and nothing is deeply hurtful in a marriage. Because that's just not realistic. That's not how marriage is. So I liked it, but because of the nostalgia, I gave it 3 stars. Okay, we're on to March, and if you are sticking with me this long, I appreciate you so much because it is a blast going back and talking about all the books that I read this year. I'm having so much fun. The next book I read is called The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren, which is an author duo. I believe it's two best friends that write books together. They're really, really popular. This is my first Christine Lauren book. It's about this sister duo, these twins. Olive, she's the maid of honor at her sister's wedding. Her soon-to-be brother-in-law's best man, his name is Ethan, so Ethan and Olive are mortal enemies. And we don't really know why, but we just know that they don't like each other in the beginning. Well, at the wedding, everyone but them gets food poisoning because everybody else eats from the seafood bar. They can't go on the honeymoon, and so they send those two on the honeymoon because it's non-refundable. And basically on the honeymoon, a lot of misunderstandings are happening and they have to pretend to be together. I can't even remember it all, but I gave it 3.5 stars. Honestly, it wasn't super memorable to me and it didn't stick out among the other romances that I've read this year. The writing was only okay to me in comparison to the other romances that I've read. So it was a fun, quick read. I did enjoy it. And honestly, it wasn't too bad in regards to like open door scenes. It was mostly closed. So I enjoyed it. Would I recommend it? Meh, maybe. The next book I read is Life Together by Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and oh my gosh, this book is short and sweet and packs a punch. I really, really loved my experience of reading this book and learning so many new doctrinal things. I've never read Dietrich Bonhoeffer before. There was one minor theological point that I did disagree with, and if you want to ask me about that, you can. I'm not going to get into it in this video, but because of that, I did only give it 4.5 stars, but I rated it 5 on Goodreads. It's very, very good. Very good. This next book, you guys, you're not ready. I don't think you're ready. I read No Exit by Taylor Adams, and it was so good. So when I picked it up, I was actually itching to read another romance because the last romance I read kind of fell short for me, the Unhoneymooners, and I was eager to get to read one that was good again, that I enjoyed. So instead I picked up a thriller because I was like, hey, you need to stretch yourself out a little bit. So I picked this one up because it was one of my book of the month picks for February, and it blew my mind. So I had never read horror before, first of all, I will say that, but this book was honestly a little borderline horror for me. I'm gonna tell you the synopsis now though. So it's about this woman named Darcy, starts with a D. But she is on her way to visit her mother, who is dying of cancer. And so on the way, she's driving in this crazy blizzard and ends up pulling over into this rest stop. And she stops there, and there's 4 strangers there in the rest stop. And as she's going out to see if her cell phone has service again, she peers into this van and sees this little girl in a cage. What? Yes, crazy. So she knows somebody there is a psychopath, but she doesn't know who. Or sociopath, I'm sorry, sociopath. She doesn't know who it is. So the whole book, she's trying to figure it out, and she's trying to rescue this little girl and rescue herself. And oh my gosh, I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. Sure to cure a reading slump. Would I recommend it to everyone? No, because there is body horror in it, and there's a lot of swearing. I do like to tell when there's swearing too. So overall, I loved it. If you can handle that kind of stuff, then please give this a read. Please, it is so good. I'm still thinking about it and reeling from it. Like how Taylor Adams writes sociopathy is just whew, goosebumps the whole time. It was so good. 5 out of 5 stars. Okay, 2 more books to go. The next book I read in March of 2021 is Anxious People by Fredrik Backman. I actually listened to this on audio, which was a great experience. I was able to read it a lot faster than I would have if I was reading it physically. So my Aunt Sarah, shout out Aunt Sarah, recommended this book to me, and I know exactly why, and now I'm gonna be recommending it to you. So basically, this book is contemporary fiction. It takes place in this small town where this bank robber tries to rob a bank and then gets stuck in this hostage situation, and so they're trying to get out of it this whole time, and you're hearing these conversations that go on during it. I'm not going to say too much. I don't want to spoil anything. When I heard that the writing for this book was exquisite and gorgeous, I was like, oh no, is this going to be like a, you know, Pride and Prejudice type situation? Because that writing is called beautiful, which it is, but it's so hard to read. But no, this is relatable, beautiful writing that you'll read it and think, that could be me. That could be me. And oh my gosh, how it speaks about anxiety and depression, familial love. All of these things are themes in this book, and I teared up throughout. And the last 5 shorter chapters of this book was weeping. This book was so moving, and I don't know if I'll ever stop thinking about it because it was so good. It was so good. Please read it. I did give it 4.5 stars out of 5, and that's because at some points in the book there was some banter going on that was a little on the annoying side for me, for my taste. That's my one critique, but overall, oh my gosh, this book is so worth it. Please go read it. We made it to the end. Last book that I read in March of 2021 is called The One Thing by Gary Keller. This is a self-help book, nonfiction. I read it thinking that it was more of a business-related book, but it's more so a self-help, life hack book. And basically what Gary Keller talks about and calls us to consider is how we're living such chaotic lives to the point where we don't even know what our goals are anymore and what we're focusing on, and how to make a hectic life and draw together and remind yourself of what your one most important thing is in your life, whether that be in your family, whether that be in your job, whether that be in your business, spiritually, in your walk with the Lord, all of these things. So he talks about that. It's not inherently a Christian book, although I was able to draw, conclusions for myself in my own walk with the Lord from it. So I loved this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Matt actually read it before me, and it was cute. He was putting like little notes throughout, and one of them, like in one of the last chapters, he says, "Hannah, this one is for you, especially part number 2," which was cute. That was cool to be able to read it kind of back to back and experience that together and talk about it together. So yeah, I loved it. Matt actually read it before me, and it was cute. He was putting like little notes throughout, and one of them, like in one of the last chapters, he says, "Hannah, this one is for you, especially part number 2," which was cute. That was cool to be able to read it kind of back to back and experience that together and talk about it together. So yeah, I loved it. And that's all the books that I read for the first quarter of the year. I cannot believe I just finished filming my first video. Take a second, Hannah, breathe. Now, we're gonna figure out how to edit this sucker and hopefully get it up to you guys soon. And hopefully you guys got a good book recommendation from this video, or 2 or 3. Anything I can do to encourage people to read more, because it is such a blessing in my life. I recommend it. I wanna do it. I wanna encourage you to do it. And please, let's have conversations about it. Please message me. Let's talk about books that I should be reading, books that you loved, all the things. I look forward to chatting with you guys. Leave me a comment, like this video, maybe even subscribe, because my goal is gonna be to be making at least one video a month for the time being, because I don't know how capable I am gonna be of making 2-3 videos a month. I mean, some people make like 7. Who are these people? Some do it daily. No, I can't do that. So we're gonna try for 1 a month. And I just can't wait to keep sharing with you guys the books that I've been reading. So God willing, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.